I'm Claudia Romo Edelman.
And I'm Cynthia Kleinbaum-Milner.
And this is a podcast, A la Latina.
The playbook to succeed, being your authentic self.
Today, an incredible guest, Patricia Pacheco de Baez, Managing Director of Private Bank and Private Client Advisor at Bank of America. And these are the 3 key takeaways of this episode.
Number 1, she has become a master relationship builder, getting people to open doors for her and for others. My favorite example was how she got her first job. She was waiting tables and telling her customers about her dreams. One of those customers got her an interview with American Express.
Number 2, how Patricia turned loss into leverage, using grief as her guide. She had many challenges from losing her mom and her brother and used that pain to fuel her dreams and make them come true.
She also talked to us about the importance of financial inclusion and her focus on democratizing financial empowerment.
All of that and more here at A La Latina. Cynthia, we've been discussing how important it is for Latinas to generate wealth, particularly because we understand that only 33% of Latinas have retirement income from savings or other assets. So how can your company help in this equation?
Well, we have several options for saving and investing accounts. The one for beginners, if you are a beginner, is our fully managed investing product. This is perfect for those who want to set it and forget it. You can select the risk level and even choose the type of companies you can invest in.
That's amazing. So what is the minimum needed to open an account?
$1. You just need $1. No excuses. The earlier you begin to invest, the sooner you will start seeing returns from your investment.
So how can people get started?
Simply download the MoneyLion app and open a managed investment account. It's quick. It takes just a few minutes.
Perfect.
Let's do it.
Today, an incredible guest and a friend of mine, Patricia Pacheco de Baez.
Patricia is a managing director, a private client advisor, and the business development lead for diverse segment within Bank of America Private Bank.
She oversees a private bank multicultural practice at the firm.
In early 2021, the Bank of America executive was promoted to managing director, and then she was appointed to co-chair Bank of America's Hispanic Latino Executive Council, which encompasses the bank's most senior Latino executives.
Patricia is also a member of the Association of Latino Professionals for America Alpha, Latino Justice, and previously was a member of the YMCA US National Board. Patricia, welcome to A La Latina.
Thank you. Muchísimas gracias. Muchísimas gracias for having me, Claudia and Cynthia.
We want to know everything about you. Tell us about your background and what made you be who you are and what you do today.
Well, where can I start? But again, I just wanted to say thank you and muchísimas gracias for having me. I think it's a great honor and it's always humbling to share the story, the journey, how to start, because it gives you an opportunity to reflect, right, and remember. So how did I start the story? I arrived here when I was 14 years old. I didn't speak a word of English. Many of folks probably already heard this story, but I actually arrived not because I wanted to. Unfortunately, my mother passed away of cancer in Dominican Republic, very early age of 42. So typical Latina way, my grandmother and my aunts decided that the best course of action was for me and my brother to come to the States. But the thing is that they didn't tell us, right? They brought us here to visit my aunt. And once we got here, they told us, guys, the best thing to do for both of you is to stay here and try your best to do the best thing you can do to stay living with your aunt. At that point in time, obviously, it was shocking because not I only lost my mother, lost my family back in the Dominican Republic, lost my friends. But I remember back then how painful it was, the moment. I also remember looking up at my very strong abuela, my strong aunts, who have just recently lost. My abuela lost a daughter recently, my aunts lost a sister and a best friend. But I looked at them, at these incredible ladies, powerful women, and got inspired by their strength and told myself I had to do the best to make my mother proud in heaven and make this woman proud of me. And I remember that it was sad, it was upsetting, and it was scary. But at early age, like many immigrants, right, I committed to myself and to my family that I was going to be accomplishing the American dream a way wilder, right? By working hard and being focused, and most importantly, never giving up on the dream of coming back one day to Dominican Republic, which many years later that didn't happen. But then I always, early age, always remember, never forget where you come from. So with that, as we tell the story today, you will find that I never have forgotten where I come from, which is the Dominican Republic. So that's a little bit of the story. I mean, I think that's from the personal side. I mean, I, just like many immigrants that first arrived to Americas, I had to go and wait tables through high school. I had to help my family with means. And how I ended up to college, that's a great question. I ended up going to college thanks to the community of Shelter Island. I arrived to Shelter Island, Long Island. Many of you probably know the Hamptons, right?
Yeah.
Very far away. My family and I were the first Latina family in Shelter Island, so that was very difficult to say the least. However, it was also the testament of what is the American community and the American country, the USA of America, which is we welcome immigrants. We support immigrants with the land of immigrants. And that community embraced my family and I and helped us and helped me apply to college, educate my family that it was okay to send your daughter away, to send your niece away to go to college. And thanks to someone committed to that, I was able to apply. I got in Manhattanville College. And thanks to the Higher Education Opportunity Program, which is a program funded by the government and by the schools, the private schools, many of them do fund it, I got full ride. And here I am. I went from having a very, coming from very limited resources to now having a great journey in banking, thanks to those opportunities that was granted to me by this incredible country, and also granted to me by beautiful neighbors that took it upon themselves to show my family and I the way. So I always take the time to thank that and to thank them and thank my community, because many times you hear the negative rhetoric. But in reality, the U.S. of America is a beautiful country, and all of us take the time to give back and embrace the immigrants that come to this country. We can never forget that, right? Because here I am, right? I'm 23 years in banking, more than 30-something years in America. I really got to say, this is the land of opportunity, right?
I mean, I'm so inspired already. And by the way, I know you said you wanted your mom to be proud. I am 100% sure she's so proud of you and everyone in your family. What you've accomplished is pretty extraordinary. It's just like very tactical question. How did you learn English? Like you lived in a place where nobody spoke Spanish.
Yes.
It was like you had to?
That was so funny, because I still my friends and always make fun of me a little bit in a good way, because they say, Patty, you still have an accent. And I love my accent, but it's funny because back on 1993, I remember like yesterday, the first day I arrived to the U.S., they didn't have an ESL teacher. The Spanish teacher, her name is Mrs. Picosi. If you see me, Mrs. Picosi, hello. She actually was appointed to be the ESL teacher, and she became more than a teacher. She became an ally. She became a sponsor, a supporter, a mentor, and she embraced and took in our family to her house. She will take us to her house to watch movies. She will take us to the movie theaters to watch movies in English. She was sitting with us in class, translating for us the classes. So again, a very different story than many children experience right here in the high schools in New York City. But again, I'm very fortunate that I had that opportunity. So yeah, we had an ESL teacher, given that I was immersed into 100% English high school. Yeah. I had to learn. It became natural, right? Like many kids nowadays.
I don't think that we take enough time to thank the allies, but there's so many allies out there that did what Mrs. Picosi did, which is take upon someone and little help. We don't need you to take over our lives. We just need to know that someone cares, to give a little hand, to give a little help. So thank you for all the people that have done that, for immigrants, for Latinos, and for everybody, because you see, from little resources to managing wealth, that's what the American dream does. I do want to go back to one point of the values that you had in your family that propelled you to be the driven professional that you are. And I know that there's a personal story that also shaped your thinking. Would you mind sharing a little bit more of that?
Sure. I think from the beginning, when I grew up in Dominican Republic early on, I saw my mother, a working mother, who changed careers several times. We came from very humble beginnings. So my mother's dream and goal was to get us out of poverty. And my mother believed that education was a path to that, right? To break through cycles of basically generations, curses of lack of resources. And my mother was an example of what it means to be persistent, to have grit, to never give up. And I remember early on looking at and resenting my mother was never around because she was working 2 jobs and then doing her master's at the end of the day, getting home at 11 o'clock at night from the university. And I remember my grandmother taking care of me and my brother. And I remember the fights and the arguments between my mother and my father and also my grandmother. But all of them were working together cohesively to show us, not by talking, but with action, what it means to persevere. And what I'm really grateful of is that example. And now I have a daughter and she's 14 years old. And I know that many times I'm not home when she wants me to be home. However, as she's getting older, I realized the impact that I'm having by showing her that a woman not only, the role of a woman is not only to be a mother or to stay home and take care of the family, but also the role the woman plays in this incredible country and in society, right? To be her entire self and value her entire self and add value to the entire society. So to me, I am really appreciated by the example. And I also remember early on that my mother always told me, your current circumstances don't define your destiny, does not define your future. Whatever it might be, you're losing a job or you're having a hard day or you're having a hard time or you're sick or you are poor or you're rich or whatever it might be, today does not define your entire future.
But I also remember the first time that I heard you talk, I was blown away by the way in which you flipped the script for me for the first time about disabilities and how you thought that disabilities were actually a pro for life and how much it taught to you. It was something that maybe you want to share?
Yes, and I think you mean by challenges, right? How you have a decision to make in life, right? I lost my mother at early age, and then later on, when I got to this country, and many years later, at 25, I lost my brother, my only brother. And I have to tell you, that was a breaking point for me. And at early age, I had to make a decision, or do I allow these current circumstances define my future and define what I'm gonna do and be, or let it get to depress me, or I use this as a fuel, as a passion, as an energy to continue and going after my dreams. So I decided the latter. I decided that no matter what happens to me, even if I fall, even if I cry, even if I'm upset, I'm gonna use it as a way to fuel my energy towards my goals and to make my family and my community proud. And I remember, it has been very tough episodes, but I really remember that from my mother, from my abuela. Every time something bad happened in the family or around the community, they just come together, focus on the solution versus the problem. That's very important, right? Many of us and many times, right, things are happening. Things are happening out of our control. So I always tell my mentees, let's focus on the solution versus the problem. What can we learn from this particular situation that we can improve? And the last thing I gotta say, the naysayers, right? There's a lot of naysayers, and that I mean negative people. And believe it or not, as I reflect upon my path, there's a lot of negative voices around, should I take this assignment or this job or go abroad like I went to Mexico, and we haven't yet talked about that. But you have to listen to yourself and really believe in yourself and realize how committed you are to your vision and your goals, and focus on the positive voices in your head, the positive voices around your network, the people that believe in you. There's always going to be someone that has something negative to say. Yeah. And back to our conversation when we first met, is I use those negative voices or those no's as a motivator, of course, as a way to say, thank you for your feedback, I appreciate it, but look, watch me. I'm going to prove you wrong. Because I think when you're really committed and passionate about whatever it might be, a goal that you may have, something that you want to accomplish, or something that you want to build for yourself, for your family, for your community, nobody can stop you. So we have to really, focus on that and never give up. Perseverance is key.
So inspired. You are like the example of the American dream. They should, if they make a billboard ad, the American dream, Patricia is going to be.
I'm the case study, like they call it.
Tell us a little bit more about private banking.
Yeah.
And also, can you tell us about your journey, how you got to private banking?
Yes.
I read, or maybe I listened to another podcast you were in which you said you started as a temp.
Yes.
And starting as a temp is a little risky. Maybe some people say, I don't want to take a temporary job. I'd rather wait until there's a permanent role for me. How did you say, I'm going to go for it, and this is my beginning?
Yeah. What happened, I started as a temp not because I wanted to. I graduated in 2001, and there was, as many of you remember, the tech bubble, right? So there was no jobs. In actually 2000, I graduated. September 2001, 9/11 was my first day of my job, which was at American Express. And the reason why I got a temp job was because of the fact that even if I had a 3.8 GPA, I'm in Haddonville College. By the way, I was just there. They became a university. I didn't have a job, because there was basically an issue in the industry, right, about jobs. Long story, I went back home to Shelter Island and basically went back to waitressing table. And what I realized at that moment, again, back to being optimistic, I'm never going to give up on my dream to go work at corporate America. I major on international business, actually double major international business and Latin American studies in college. So what I did is every table that I waited on, I told my story, where I came from, my elevator speech, where I came from, what I wanted to do. And in one of those tables, I met Gordon Just, who at the time was the head of American Express, Western Hemisphere. And then as I was talking to him about my story, he had a great affinity for Latin America, especially Dominican Republic. He said, why don't we just set an interview for you with my team? Mm-hmm. And at that point in time, they didn't have an open job. So that's how the temp job came in. And I remember walking into the garden in American Express building. I don't know if you have visited downtown in Vista Street. Mm-hmm. And seeing these beautiful big palms and realizing, OMG, oh my God, this is the American dream. This is my dream. Even if it was a temp, even if it was basically very little money, I just wanted the opportunity. And that's exactly what happened. I came in at American Express Bank as a temp. And then little by little, actually within 6 months, I got an extended offer full time. And then basically 7 years went by really fast at American Express, where I covered the Midwest and Canada for financial institutions. Then I went and got invited to join JP Morgan for another 7 years, where I covered as a banker in CIB, or Global Commercial Investment Bank, where I covered Latin America. And then now the last 10 years, I was invited to join Bank of America. Initially, the first 8 years at Bank of America, I was a corporate investment banker, global corporate investment banker, which basically were focusing on Fortune 500 companies, global Fortune 500 companies above $2 billion in annual sales. So my job as a banker, as a corporate banker, was to be a relationship manager and support these corporates. They are based in the U.S., but they were multinationals, like Unilever, Diageo, many others, and from Latin America, like many Bimbo, like Mexico, for example, helping them and supporting them as a relationship manager, get other services from Bank of America and also at the time at JP Morgan. So that has been my career, relationship management role. In the last 3 years, almost 3 years, I joined private bank, and it was a pivotal moment because it's very unheard of for you to move from one line of business to the other. But I have been fortunate that at Bank of America, they provide you a lot of opportunities across the company. And once I got managing director in Bank of America Global Corporate Investment Bank, I realized I wanted to do more. I wanted to do something differently. And I got promoted in Corporate Investment Bank, and it was the biggest day of my life, to be honest. It was a lot of hard work together and a lot of focus and a lot of support of mentors and sponsors, by the way. I decided I had more to give from a leadership perspective. So I was invited by the head of private bank in New York City to join her as a market leader, joining her leadership team and driving diverse segments for New York City division. So it was a great honor working under Katie Knox, which was the president of Bank of America Private Bank, but more importantly, working for Gina Mayback, which is the division exec for New York City.
And Latina.
And Latina, the first Latina ever working for the CEO of private bank in Bank of America. So for me, it was a great honor to be part under their leadership and also work with Tiffany Ubeck-Sanders, which is the head of diverse segments across the country. So it has been a journey, and I think we never talked about, often enough, we don't talk about the risks that we take in our careers. I think this has been probably the biggest risk I've taken, because I went from almost 21 years of global corporate investment bank, right, in different roles, cover financial institutions, then cover public sector, then cover corporates, and now moving all the way to private bank, which is individual wealth, families, and institutions like private equity and hedge funds. It's a it's like switching backs, but without switching backs. Which I think it's a lot of risk. A lot of folks question me, is she going crazy? But the reason why I did it, it's because I'm always looking to learn. I'm looking to expand my we call it a skill set. And I always encourage my mentees and then the folks that I run into is to take risks.
But it was a calculated risk.
It was a calculated risk. Definitely was a calculated risk from a perspective that I have solid skill sets in relationship management, solid acumen that I could be transferred to this role, right? Unless you have that, then it's riskier, right? However, if you see men today, there's a statistics that prove that, right? Men take a job being 50-50, right? 50% ready and 50% not. We as women, most of us, especially Latinas, we need to be 150% most of the time prepared or ready to take that role. So what I asked myself the question as I was contemplating moving to private bank, it's how can I add value in that role? How could I make a difference within private bank, and especially within the acumen and the experience and the skill sets that I have covering these large conglomerates? How can I really bring that to individuals who have accumulated wealth and run multi-billion-dollar businesses, right? So for me, I think that the skills were transferable, and therefore, because of that, was a calculated risk. I always encourage folks to do that. I know it's hard, but maybe we can talk about how to mitigate the risk. And the way you mitigate the risk is by creating mentors, allies that can support you through your learning curve, being self-aware of what you do know and what you don't know, and work on the things that you don't know, at the same time enhancing and amplifying the things that you do know, because you need to have that confidence. You have to hone in on that confidence and believing in yourself to bring your entire self to the table and to work. So to me, that's very key. And the third thing that I tell you about how to create the calculated risk is very importantly as well to make sure that you're humble and nimble enough, because many times when you come from being very successful at one thing, for example, in global corporate investment bank, 21 years, I did really well. I got promoted to managing director. I was on the highest possible place in my career. Coming to a place where I had a lot to learn, was very nimble, very humbly. So you have to be okay to be in that space. Even if it's for a little bit, you don't have to be the superstar, the one that know it all to begin with. But you definitely have to be the one that is asking the right questions, that is open to learn, that's open for feedback. And feedback, I think, is the best gift anyone can give you.
So I'm just imagining the story that you told me, that you told us, makes me just like imagine this little girl in Shelter Island, this teenager, having a group of people that took care of you, maybe like, I don't know how you built those relationships, but then we see you later, you're in your early 20s, waiting tables, again, building relationships with random people that you're waiting tables, and then you talk to us about your career in which you are building relationships with executives of the most successful companies in the world. So I have a feeling that one of your superpowers is building relationships. Do you have a playbook for what you do to gain people's trust, and for people to want you to succeed? Because if you were an iceberg, you know that those images of the iceberg where you see the water and there's like all this substance below, I see so many people that really got you where you are, and you've spoken about them, but why you? What did you do that people said, I'm going to take her to the movies. I'm going to help her learn English. I'm going to get her an interview at Amex. I'm going to promote her. I'm going to steal her to go to a different place. What did you do?
I think that's a great question. And I was thinking about that the other day. And someone, one of my mentors internally tell me, Patty, you're very likable because you're authentic. I think authenticity is key. It's not about being likable because you do nice things to people. It's about when you're your true self. And I think one of the things, and Claudia and I were laughing about this the other day. We're having a conversation, and I'm like, Claudia, you need to do this, you need to do that. One of the things about me, it's that I am my true self in every possible conversation. And my objective is always thinking about how I can be of service to you. Whether since I was an early age, given my background and my childhood, we always have to think about how can I help my cousin, my brother, how can I help my household, how can I help my abuela. So I grew up in an environment where I was in service to others. And I think as I come into the world of corporate America, I'm always thinking how I can be helpful, whether it's my client, whether it's my coworker, whether it's my mentors, my sponsors, my supporters. I think to me that has paid a long way because many of my network today are individuals who I met 20 years ago, who we all grown in corporate America. And every single one of them, when they call me, I pick up the phone and I say how I can support and how can I help, even if it's just to listen. And the other thing that I think that it's one of my superpowers is to come from a place of giving, right? But also coming from a place of how can I be helpful? But as well, how can I listen? Because many times people just want to be listened to. And many times, even in relationship management, and that's a skill set. Listening is a skill set, by the way, that we need to develop and cultivate. And I still cultivate that. However, in relationship management, where you're with a client, they want you to listen. What are their pain points? They don't want to hear about your great value proposition and your products and services in detail. They want to know how you're going to fix an issue that they have and how you're going to know that issue that they have if you don't listen. Yeah. When you're with a friend and you're with a mentor, or whether it's in corporate or whether it's outside, how you going to really understand that individual inside out if you don't really listen and listening in without having a response in your head? And again, that to me, it's something that I have been working my best to work on that skill set. But the other way I got to tell you that many people tell me, because I don't like bragging about myself, is that I'm always thinking long term. I think about not necessarily on building short-term relationships. It's about how can I be of value in the long term? How can I cultivate relationships?
But I think that we haven't discussed this in the podcast enough. What you just picture the pyramid and how do you push forward? So I want to ask you both, who is the successful? The giver, the taker, or the matchmaker?
Oh. That's a great question.
We don't know enough, like Latinas. Yeah. So what do you think? Just give me a guess. Who is the winner and who's the loser? There's givers, takers, or matchmakers?
I think it would be between the givers and the matchmakers.
Who is the winner and who's the loser there?
No, they both would be winners. The losers will be only the takers. Yeah. And I can give you examples of that.
Okay, hold it. So I think that it is really important to talk about this because we as Latinos have all the ingredients, but we just don't know the recipe.
Yeah.
The winners, the losers of all, between the winners, the takers, and the matchmakers, are the givers. Ah. The givers are the losers of all, but the winners are the givers. Why? Because a matchmaker will never let a taker go to the top. So it will always say like, no, you don't deserve, I'm not gonna push you up. Mm-hmm. But you can also, and the matchmaker will only be trading, so it's like a slower
But
slope.
You said the giver is the winner and the loser?
Exactly. It depends on how much you give.
Yes.
It depends on how carefully you give. It's how authentically you give. If you are like a give it all, you're going to be losing yourself on the way.
Yeah.
But if you're like, if you're giving to people like the 10%, the 15%, the 15 minutes here, people will be invested in your success because you help them. So
That's
you
what
become a little bit of the antidote of everything. And I do think that it is important for our audience to understand that giving is a gift, but you have to give carefully, intentionally, and authentically so that we can push each other and succeed.
Yeah.
I love that because, one of the things that we were discussing among, our network in OLA and in HLC, which is OLA is the Hispanic Employee Resource Group at Bank of America, and HLC is the Hispanic Latino Executive Council at Bank of America. And it was a similar discussions I had when I was at JP Morgan and Amex among the ERGs. It's the fact that it's so much expected of us, right? From as you go through the ranks of corporate America as a Latinx, it's very few of us. So it's so much expected from giving, right? Giving your time, mentorship, sponsoring. And many times folks get, to your point, burned out, right? Because you're in everywhere, you're in every panel, in every mentorship program, supporting and giving back, which I think is a duty and the way of you paving forward. And we're very committed to that. But I also say, and I have been pushing back recently, is it has to also be a balance, right? And what I'm taking for what you're saying, which is true, is about how we do things in an intentional way, in measurable way.
Exactly.
If there is no measurement to anything, then there's no results. So for example, what we did recently, it's like, how do we measure success in mentorship program? And for me, what I done recently, it's like, who am I investing my time in? Is it top talent individuals who are really going to do the follow-ups on all the things that I'm suggesting and advising? Which are the organizations that I'm going to be investing in? Are there organizations that are really giving back in a genuinely way?
Good students, she would say. Good students. Like with me, she's like, you have to do 1, 2, 3, 4. And they're like, I'm kind of like, I've done 1, 2, and 3. Working on 4.
I don't tell her what to do, people. But she's so funny. But in reality, it's true. Like, you have to be calculated around the quality of your time, especially as you go up in your corporate
Let's talk about this. There are 3 things that I think that we still have to cover with you. One is balance, the other one is wealth, and the third piece is identity. On balance, we've heard again and again how hard it is to be a successful corporate America leader and balance your life, your personal life. So what have you learned in the last 20 years? What would you say how to do it? Or what to be aware of?
Well, for those that are my friends, know I am horrible at this, in balancing. I think I done a horrible job in work-life balance, whatever we want to call it right now. But I think for me, one of the things that I'm reflecting on and I'm trying my best to, it's to spend more quality time with my family. I think if anything COVID taught you is that life is precious and it's very limited. And what I realize also for me is as I'm growing older is spending more quality time with myself. So I am a very focused corporate America executive, right? Who, not by choice really, because I have to provide for my family, right? And obviously the passion and the willingness to do more and give more is because I want to be more successful to give back to my family, to my community. But little by little, I noticed at one point in time that I was losing myself. And I'm losing myself and feeling depleted and feeling exhausted. And, many of my friends, they have taken many hobbies, whether it's meditation, whether it's running, exercise. And I really believe for me, what works is more meditation, going to church, developing my spiritual life. It's very important. I've been growing up as a Catholic since I was early age, and spirituality is something that was passed down to me by my grandmother. And going to church is something that brings me peace and tranquility. But in terms of motherhood, which probably, I don't know if you've spoken of about this on your podcast, I think you have, because I listened to Ileana, I listened a little bit to Adela. I think that's the one that hits the most to me, meaning where I always feel guilty. I feel like there's not enough hours in a day to be there for my daughter and also be a successful career woman. I think one of the things that I learned from someone that was very successful, a female in the banks, she told me, Pat, it's not about quantity of time, it's about quality of time. It's making sure that you're there in every moment that matters for your daughter. It's making sure that you're present. And that's hard. Now, especially with the phone, with the iPhone, with the social media, with the emails that you get 24/7 and clients are expecting you to answer and colleagues are expecting. But you have to put that balance. And I have learned the hard way to put that balance, because I think my daughter, she's extremely independent. I think she's my biggest, actually, I know for sure she's my biggest pride, because I see the young woman that she's becoming, an extremely independent, hard worker, very secure about herself. But I'm not gonna lie, Claudia and Cynthia, I feel guilty all the time. And what I realized is that, how can I be present? How can I be in the moments that really matter? How can I really listen to her? I pick up the phone, no matter what meeting I'm in, and she calls, I pick up the phone. Or I'm texting her through the day. And one of the other reasons why I moved to private bank is because I was traveling. I was traveling every single week in the US and outside of the US, globally. And I realized after COVID, when we were home for 2 years straight, oh my God, my daughter needs me to be home. I mean, we exercise together, we do things together. And as a mother, I had to make a choice. Do I, the next few years where she needs me the most, which is teenager years, we can argue that's when they really, especially girls, do I spend a little bit more time in New York and less travel? And that's one of the things that went into the equation when I was calculating pros and cons in moving from global corporate investment bank to private bank, which is more domestic, right? But I have to say to you, balance, it's a journey. And the last thing I tell you about this is that if there's one thing that I wish I'd do better, is to be more, give myself more grace. I think sometimes we are all each other's, our own self-worth enemy, because we expect so much from ourselves.
Totally.
We want to be 100% the best mother every single day, 100% the best corporate executive, and 100% the best friend and family member. And many times we can't do it all at the same time.
And I wish someone would have told me that. I was so hard on myself when I had to ground break. I had to do, I was the first one, the first Mexican that was at the UN in such, I was like this and so on. So I wish someone would have said, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Even if you, the 5 extra hours that you're putting every day on, you could reduce it to 3 or to 2, and it's gonna be okay either way. Okay, so let's go on to...
I do want to share one more point, which is about the village, right?
Yeah.
So I'm very fortunate because I have a husband who's extremely supportive, and I have family members who have been very supportive. So my daughter is now turning 14, but through these 14 years, if I didn't have that right partner, which is my husband, and Davis Baez, and if I had didn't have the right village, which was my aunts, my cousins, my friends, my community, that many times even my college friends that helped me through when I was doing my MBA to throw my daughter a birthday party, right? I think it's important to take the time to surround yourself, right, with the right village, and never forget to be grateful and thankful, because it takes a village. It's not just about ourselves.
So before we go to our usual questions about being Latina, you are in private wealth. You have spoken about how it's been important for you to make money. And this is a bit of a taboo topic. Actually, in my day job, we talk about how people, and women in particular, and Latina women even more so, we don't feel comfortable saying, I want to be rich. So can you talk to us about how can Latinas benefit from the banking system, either working on it or having a relationship with a bank in a way that helps them build wealth, retire?
Yes,
And break the taboo of money.
And break the taboo
And break
of
the
money.
taboo and just go
We
get
wanna be rich.
multi-generational wealth.
Yes, I think it's not necessarily just about being rich, right? It's about building generational wealth, because to us, Latinos, especially Latinas, we don't have a lot of the financial acumen, right? Because we don't grow up with families that have generations of wealth and pass down that to us, and that legacy of understanding the tools. I think every female and every person actually should be leveraging financial institutions, banks, private bankers, or financial advisors. And the reason why I say that is because just like you go to a doctor to get advice and get perspective and get input on what's going on with your body, It's the same thing. And you go to an expert, right? When you have migraines or you have a stomachache, you go to an expert. It's the same concept. Around wealth, it's important to also leverage those experts to give you advice, to give you perspective, and the right experts, right? Because there's many out there, but obviously the right experts that have you at the center of everything and have you in mind and your family, not just in the short term, but also in the long term. I think private banking has a lot of offering. And one of the things that motivates me since I moved to private bank, there's such a huge vast of solutions and products that can be very helpful to that community. What I want to do in our team, we focus on democratizing financial empowerment. It's critical for us to understand the key things that we need to do, whether it's set up at early age, an IRA, 401k, or the different instruments, the basic instruments. But as you grow and you become an entrepreneur and you create wealth, how do you set up your business for success for generations to come? How you do that transfer of wealth to the next generations to come by leveraging the right tools. And I think if I look at our community compared to other communities, that's an area that we need to do a lot of more work. And I keep telling Claudia this. I mean, I think there's a lot of lack of knowledge, but more importantly, a lot of taboos, right? There's a lot, like Latinos in general, and I'm generalizing because it's not all Latinos, they have this type of weird relationship with banks, right? The lack of trust. So banks, we need to make sure that we are becoming more approachable, right? That we are in the community, that we're explaining things in a very basic, simplistic way. So my commitment and one of the things why I'm so motivated the last few years is because what we are doing in private bank is really bringing all these incredible tools that we have in this legacy trust bank of years of private wealth, bringing it to the business owners who are now out there outshining many others, right? From a growth perspective, from a GDP perspective, from a wealth creation perspective. However, without those tools and without the right advice, most of the time that wealth gets evaporated. So yes, to address your exact question, it's critical not just to create wealth, but to maintain it, preserve it, and grow it. And to do that, you definitely need to work with an expert.
A best friend, like a BFF. It's almost like when you move to a place, they say you need to have the name of a great doctor, be friends with the police, and have a banker friend.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about identity.
Yes.
Being Latina in corporate America, for you, superpower, a pro, a con? When did you have to dial down? What do you think it is like the asset that has brought to you being a Latina?
I definitely think it's my superpower. And if you see me in every possible discussions I had or even my LinkedIn post, I love being Latina. I embrace who I am from the beginning. Early on in my career, I had a lot of feedback around you have to tone your way you talk. Your passion sometimes gets the best of you. I was coached, obviously, many times early on, elevating my voice, right? Dominicans, especially Dominicans, we talk very high. In my house, we have this joke where we say, we're not arguing, we're just talking. So that sometimes comes to corporate America. And obviously, you have to, it's not that corporate America is telling you not to be yourself, but you also have to think about in any conversations that you're having, whether with the client internally, you have to have a healthy debate and you need to know how to debate and how to communicate in a way that's precise and concise and most importantly, delivers the message that you intended to deliver. So I use my superpower of Latinidad as a way of being authentic, right? Because Latinidad culture, Latina culture, Latino culture, whatever we want to call it, that is our superpower. I think the reach of diversity that we have as a community, our heritage that we have from our family members, and how diverse we are as a Latino community. I think to me that's a superpower that we bring because we are diverse as it is. Mm-hmm. So there's so many different perspectives, even here sitting down, right? We're all from different countries, different cultures within Latin America, but we have our language in common. We have a lot of things in common and our love for our countries and our families and our community in common. However, we have a lot of perhaps different perspectives. So I think different perspectives, whether you're Latino or not, it should be welcome. But for me, many times people say, Patty, you may be using the Latina, flag too much. So be it. I don't really care about that. I think for me, it's about being my authentic self. And I am 100% Latina and 100% American. And I'm the most proud of that.
Now, tell us, if you were talking to your 30-year-old self, I think you were in your second job around that time, what advice would you give yourself?
I will give myself the advice, stop and smell the roses. Take the time to smell the roses. Many times, we're so focused on the job, on the next promotion, on the deal, on winning the deal. And we get the deal win, and we get the promotion, but we don't even take time to go and celebrate.
Are you smelling the roses now?
I'm taking the time in an intentional way to stop, smell the roses, celebrate, go to dinner, open that champagne bottle, celebrate with my team, bring my team, talk about the win, and stop and say, what did I do really well and what could I learn, and move on. And I'm taking the time as well to reflect on when things don't go well, but don't think about it too much.
And when we have your daughter as a successful executive sitting here and talking about you, the way that you did, about your family and your friends, I hope that you can realize that like everything was okay and that you did what you could with the tools you had, and that, like there's always the time to do it. So thank you for everything what you do for Latinos. I have to say that. You're really vested in making sure that you elevate Latinos, that there's more Latinos in wealth, that there's more Latinos non-for-profits getting support, and that you're, like not only giving your advice, but also pushing corporate America to give more. So who else should we have in this podcast?
Oh, I definitely think you have. You're putting me on the spot, but I definitely think you should have more of women from wealth. Definitely we should have Gina Mayback, which is my boss. I already told her. You should definitely contemplate as well to bring allies, by the way. But I think from another woman that you should consider internally, we have Cristina Cuaron, she's incredible, also Mexican. She's the CEO for global technology in the bank. I mean, we have so many women, but Cristina Cuaron comes on top of mind. She has a rich history as well. We also have Karen Chopra from BOFA. She's the head of Hispanic Latino strategy for Bank of America. I mean, we do have a couple others. I mean, you have Silvana Montenegro from JP Morgan. You should definitely bring, she and I go way back in JP. We also should bring Montserrat Gerard, who runs...
I'm glad that you just took it on the spot.
I wasn't prepared, but here's my directory.
Yeah, no, Montserrat Gerard.
Tell us, why do you think a podcast like this and what we're doing is useful for Latinas?
I think it's critical. I mean, the time that you told me you were doing this, which I think I suggested one time to do this podcast, I really think amplifying the story of Latina women, it's critical because the stories are not told. Yeah. We are definitely still pay only 50 something to the dollar. There's a lack of representation at the board levels. There's still a huge, gap of wealth because we're only making 50 cents of the dollars. And the podcast helps amplifying the story of success, but more importantly, showing generations to come that it's possible, number one. Number two, amplifying this talent. When corporate America out there is looking for talent for boards or whatever its positions, there's no excuses because you amplify not only talent, non-Latina talent, you amplifying the top talent that exists today in U.S. America who are driving this economy.
So yes, for all the audience that is out there and you have felt touched and inspired, please share this podcast with other people. Rate us, give us 5 stars. This podcast is produced with a lot of love and knowledge by people like you sharing your story, produced by Malka, which is the most amazing production home. We need you to amplify it and get it out there so that we can get Latinas more on the top in half the time with half the bruises. Patricia Pacheco, what an incredible honor to have you here in the podcast today.
Thank you.
Thank you for teaching us how to lead
a la Latina.